And now comes time for the reviews. Each of these is going to be about 3 minutes long, so I'll be focusing solely on the most interesting qualities of each series. If you want something more comprehensive, perhaps broken down into points and read like I'm in high school drama, there are other channels that have you covered. Oh, and for those of you who don't know how my review scale works, my 4 medals, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, represent strengths of recommendation, ranging from "you will definitely like this" to "I will fucking cut you if you don't start this thing right now." Then there are black medals, which mark a work as either being so bad it's good, or bad in a way that aspiring critics or creators can learn from. Grimgar would probably be getting one of those if I were reviewing it. Shows can also get no medal. You can assume that applies to pretty much everything that I dropped.
見つけたいから走り出してくその声が地図になる I didn't expect to enjoy Akagami no Shirayukihime nearly as much as I did. I kinda picked it up on a whim during the summer season, expecting a fluffy, light love story with a fantasy edge to fill in the gaps between Orebro episodes, and that's kinda what I got. But I wasn't expecting the series to so perfectly nail and even improve on that Renaissance-era Disney feel. The best word to describe this show, in absolutely every aspect, is beautiful. Beautiful music, beautiful writing, and those visuals. Holy shit. This is one of the most polished TV productions I've seen in the last year, and instead of blowing its budget on big fights, it tries its damnedest to make its big romantic moments feel straight up magical. But the high production value shouldn't come as much of a surprise, considering that Shirayukihime is the work of Studio Bones and director Masahiro Ando, whose other work includes Cowboy Bebop the movie, the similarly breathtaking Hanasaku Iroha, and the upcoming Kickstarter anime Under the Dog. Ando's deft direction guides us through the story of Shirayuki, a headstrong young woman with beautiful red hair who is forced to run away from her home country when the selfish prince tries to claim her as his concubine. During her escape, she encounters Zen, the prince of the neighboring kingdom, and they form a fast friendship which slowly blossoms into love. What starts as a loose interpretation of the classic Snow White fairy tale, complete with a poisoned apple, slowly morphs into a surprisingly compelling fantasy yarn about love transcending class boundaries and the politics of monarchy. This series won't wow you with any big ideas like Spice and Wolf can, but it is comparable in its cast of rich, likable characters. Shirayuki is a strong protagonist by any metric. I'm tempted to call her a strong female lead, but that kind of undercuts how much better she is than most believe-it boys and light novel guys. She's not some damsel in distress, which you might expect given the source material, but she's not a Mary Sue either. She's very capable of outwitting pursuers and fending for herself using her charm and intellect and impressive knowledge of horticulture, but she's not much good in a fight, and she's not very street smart either. She relies on Zen and his retainers Mitsuhide, Kiki, and Obi, but they rely on her in turn. And her motivation is far from typical. She doesn't just want to find love, she wants to succeed in her field as an herbalist and improve herself so that she can stand at the same level as Zen. And Zen, in turn, wants to live up to the duties of his station in life and her expectations of him. Their love for each other is built out of mutual admiration and respect, which, now that I say it out loud, is way too goddamn rare in anime, as are satisfying romantic conclusions, which thankfully this show makes good on. But as much as this is a show about love, it's also a show about nobility. Not just nobility in station, but nobility in purpose and action. In some way or another, almost all of the main characters strive to be better, and the show does a great job of making you root for them. Akagami no Shirayukihime is magical and well worth the time that I spent watching it. I give it a silver medal rating. If you're interested in streaming it, you can check it out at Funimation.com. The second season of Haikyuu was a rollicking good time. It kicked off with Karasuno at their lowest point yet, defeated by Alba Josai in the qualifying round of their last tournament, and forced to confront a scary reality. They can't keep relying on Hinata and Kageyama's freak quick attack in order to win. Every character on the team has their own clear metric of improvement that they need to meet. Hinata needs to get better at controlling the ball instead of just firing blindly, while Kageyama must learn to let go of his ego and work with his teammates. Tadashi needs to make good on his pinch serving practice. Inoshita needs to step it up as a leader in preparation for the third year's graduating, and fuck it, if I describe all of these characters, we'll be here all day. A lot of the season's first arc is dedicated to their personal growth through training, while the second arc focuses on them pulling their new skills together for the tournament. This is not new ground for a sports series to cover. In fact, it's kind of formula, but Haikyuu handles it exceptionally well. Each character gets their moment in the spotlight and has their own challenges to overcome, and the chemistry between the team members, not to mention their friendly rivals, is really strong. I love these characters, in part because, unlike a lot of shonen protagonists, they're kind of endearingly stupid. There are a few players who are clearly the brains of the team, but most of the cast are dumb jocks. Even Kageyama, the arrogant volleyball savant, is portrayed as a total idiot off the court. He and Hinata struggle with their schoolwork, and it's played quite well for laughs. The show also expands its supporting cast to include more players from other schools and a lot of the team's family. The big addition is Hitoka Yachi, the new first-year assistant manager, whose initially reluctant work with the team helps to build her self-esteem and give her a sense of purpose. Yachi's shyness, along with Kyoko's cool-headed attitude, provides a needed counterweight to the boisterous personalities of the team members, and she's got great chemistry with both Hinata and Kageyama. Her presence helps to strengthen the team emotionally, but I can see her being set up as the linchpin of a dramatic love triangle down the road should the mangaka need to shake things up a little. The season drags somewhat in its training-focused first core, relying mostly on character chemistry while it tries to build up the stakes of the second act. But a setup is as good as its payoff, and Haikyuu certainly delivers on that. The action in this series is really something. Production IG has done a great job capturing the art style of the manga, which gives the characters a certain animalistic edge, and these exaggerated characters look spectacular in motion. For the most part, the direction of the matches isn't quite up to par with, say, Baby Steps, but the animation is miles better than most other sports shows, and it delivers on that sense of motion that's vital to making this kind of action really sing. The climax in particular, a rematch with Alba Josai, gave me chills, and the show definitely concluded on a high note. Haikyuu Season 2 used the standard sports anime playbook to very effectively keep me hooked, and for that I give it a bronze medal rating. You can watch both seasons on Crunchyroll. I have said a lot about Erased since it started airing. Maybe too much. I've made 3 videos about the series, and I spent a good hour or 4 defending it to Digibro over Skype. So you might expect me to say it's my favorite show of the season, but I won't, because it's not. Don't get me wrong, I think Erased is an unequivocally great show. It has strong, bold direction, solid character writing and performances, a great soundtrack, and a very potent, well-crafted emotional core. These aspects, for me, elevate the series above its flaws. But there are flaws, and since I've spent so much time praising the series, click these annotations if you want to see those thoughts, I'm gonna take a bit of time here to expand on them. Firstly, though, the flaws are not that the mystery is weak, or that the romance doesn't pan out. If those are your complaints, then you straight up just don't get it. The show is a thriller, and yes, that does preclude it from working as a mystery. I explained that in excruciating detail on my podcast with Digi, but the core point is you can't create suspense if you don't actively make the viewer aware of danger, and you can't create a mystery if you don't actively try to obscure the facts of that danger from the viewer. You just can't combine those two things together. Also, if your complaint is that Satoru's powers are never explained, the symbolism of the butterfly, which is named after the Buddha, heavily implies that they were given to him through divine intervention and are an analog to the spider's thread, which is another metaphorical theme that plays a strong part in the second half of the series. Anyway, as for the romance, Satoru's goal was never to find a girlfriend, and he actively expresses that he's not interested in Airi or Kaio. When he sees Kaio has a kid, he's happy for her. That's it. The cuck meme is funny, but it's not really correct. Satoru's goal was to become a successful mangaka, and he earns that by the end. The show's problems start in the manga. Kei Sanbei just never had a strong grasp on how to construct a totally coherent plot. The story of Erased is held together by contrivances, but it at least sticks to the golden rule of never solving problems with these contrivances, only creating them. So the victories of its characters still feel earned, but these problems are compounded by the show's running time. A lot of vital plot details and character backgrounds had to be truncated to fit the series into 12 episodes, which creates further contrivances and makes characters who were strong in the manga, like Airi, Yashiro-sensei, and Kenya, fall kind of flat. What the show does preserve from the manga is Satoru, his mom, the bond he shares with his friends, and Kaio. These elements are ultimately the heart of Erased as a work of art, and the show truly does them justice, creating a powerful, bittersweet, nostalgic tone and some of the most breathtaking individual scenes that I've seen in any show, period. Ideally, this series would have been the length it needed to fully explore those cut aspects, but TV production is a business, and that just wasn't in the cards. I'd rather a show cut up its source material while preserving the heart than water down everything or end on a cliffhanger in the hopes of a second season that might never come. And to its credit, though Erased feels lacking in these areas, it doesn't feel incomplete. Erased is clearly a work of passion, produced by a team of masters at their craft. It sucks you in with great filmmaking and manages to be exciting and moving in equal measure. Plus, it gave me and everyone else a lot to talk about this season, and for that, it earns a bronze medal. You can watch it on Crunchyroll if you haven't already. Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World, is yet another show based on a light novel about a normal guy who gets trapped in an RPG-like fantasy world. But it's also so much more. Kazuma Sato is a total waste of space, a shiftless hikikomori who only leaves the house to buy new video games. One day, when he's out getting a special edition of his favorite MMO, he sees a girl about to be hit by a truck and leaps to save her, dying in the process. He didn't die on impact or anything. As he learns immediately after dying, it wasn't actually a truck, but a tractor that he mistook for one. And the cause of his death was an acute stress reaction. He died of a panic attack at the hospital as he peed himself, and the doctors around him laughed themselves silly. So did his family when they found out what happened. Regardless of his unseemly death, he's given a second chance. Aqua, the goddess who meets him in the afterlife, says that he can be reincarnated in an RPG-like world with a totally OP power item of his choosing. Annoyed with the goddess's haughty attitude, however, he declares he'll take her with him instead, just to spite her. Thus begins a delightfully mean-spirited spoof of the bog-standard light novel wish fulfillment fantasy. Kazuma quickly teams up with a party full of beautiful women, but there's a catch. They're all fucking batshit crazy. I mean, they'd have to be to sign on under a cynical, antisocial nerd and a stupid, spoiled, whiny goddess. These are not people prone to making good life decisions. At first glance, each character seems to fit into the standard archetypes you expect in this sort of series. The tsundere, the lolly, and the ojo-sama. But they subvert these tropes with some serious mental hangups. The party's mage is an irrepressible chunibyo who's capable of casting immeasurably powerful explosion magic once per day, and only that one spell because it's the coolest, and how dare you suggest she learn anything else? Their tank is a clumsy crusader who says that she's motivated by a noble instinct to protect her allies, but is really just a hardcore masochist who fantasizes about being beaten up, captured, and tortured by monsters. These characterizations brilliantly lampoon both absurd RPG conventions and the tropes of this weirdly specific subgenre. The cute lolly's childish impulses frequently put the group in danger. The dignified lady's refined air is just a barely disguised repressive front. Aqua at first appears to be an aloof tsundere, but she's kind of an idiot and ends up being the butt of most of the series' jokes. And since that's usually the protagonist's role, Kazuma ends up being the above-it-all tsundere instead. He doesn't want these girls anywhere near him, but their idiocy is kinda endearing and lovable in a weird, self-destructive way. Konosuba is the embodiment of good satire. It's uproariously funny with great writing and strong comedic timing that allows its jokes to hit even if you're totally unfamiliar with what it's spoofing. But at the same time, these jokes show an intimate understanding of the genre's foibles as well as its appeal. If you want to have a good time, don't call any of these girls. They're straight up ruin your life crazy. But do watch Konosuba because it's smart and hilarious, and it easily earns a gold medal rating. Next up on the docket, we have another fucking light novel show about an otaku who gets transported to an RPG world. Except this otaku happens to have a gun, and so do all his army buddies. But none of the people in the fantasy world do, which means they get destroyed. Gate has been criticized heavily since it first started airing for being essentially insidious propaganda designed to prop up Japan's self-defense force. I don't think it quite deserves that. Gate is definitely propaganda, but it's way too dumb to be called insidious. Nothing in this series could possibly manage to sell army life to anyone with a functioning brain. The show spends something like 90% of its running time focusing on Itami, that's the Mary Sue protagonist by the way, picking up cute fantasy girls. And I know people don't think super highly of the average otaku, but they're probably not dumb enough to join the army on the off chance they might get to fuck a half-elf. The combat situations that Itami and the JSDF get into are at least a little more interesting, though no less stupid. The series delights in showing modern military forces decimating knights on horseback and other medieval units, using machine guns to tear through their armor. They even take down a dragon with an Apache, which is pretty metal. And yeah, that would happen, but it doesn't really make the JSDF look good. It's like watching a really tall guy hold a midget at arm's length and kick him. You don't come away impressed even if the music swells when he does it. I mean, realistically, you only need a walkie-talkie to create an insurmountable advantage over any pre-industrial force that doesn't speak your language. When the JSDF comes up against real militaries in the show, they only win by using magic, because, well, most of the things in the world beyond the gate just can't hold a candle to a service pistol. All of the magic users and warriors capable of overcoming these odds just happen to end up in Itami's harem. Harem. The show tries to explore big ideas like how the politics of this world function and how they would be changed by the introduction of this new technology, but every concept it throws out is a tired cliche, and everyone in this universe is so dumb and poorly written that it's impossible to take any of it seriously. It doesn't help that the directing is atrocious. The director doesn't know how to properly frame an ensemble shot or even a simple shot, reverse shot conversation, so he just inserts random split screens of whatever character is talking. Some people might like this, but it totally takes me out of the show. I stop seeing the characters as real objects in the environment and start seeing them as abstracted sprites accompanied by talking heads in a video game. I just can't take anything the characters are saying seriously when it's presented this way. On the other hand, the action directing is pretty competent, which means Gate serves as an interesting counterpoint to Grimgar. One show can't do dialogue to save its life, the other can't do action, but it's easier to consume something that's overly dumb and fluffy than it is to consume something somewhat smart but very stuffy. So Gate is the show that I ended up finishing. Don't take that to mean it's any good though. It's not even interesting enough for a black medal. With that out of the way, we at last reach our anime of the season, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu. Right off the bat, this show has one of the most unique and intriguing setups of any anime I've ever seen. On his release from prison, a nameless ex-convict makes a beeline for the downtown theater. The one thing that's kept him going in the last year inside is a dream: to be a Rakugo performer. Rakugo is an art unique to Japan that sits somewhere between stand-up comedy and a one-man play. Rakugo storytellers perform from a kneeling position, telling vivid comedic stories aided by just two simple props, a paper fan and a small cloth. Performers must embody many different characters through only their body language and tone of voice, while maintaining good comedic timing and delivering the story at a good pace. It's a tough discipline and one steeped in tradition. Storytellers train as apprentices for years before becoming full-fledged performers. One of the greatest honors for an apprentice is to inherit the stage name of his master and carry on his legacy. The show concerns itself a lot with names and how they reflect who we are. It posits that the names that we use privately with those close to us reflect the different sides of ourselves that we show to them. And it emphasizes the importance of maintaining one's public image by only ever referring to most of its characters by their stage name, or the nicknames that they give to each other. The ex-con becomes an apprentice under a crotchety old master named Urakate Yakumo, who gives him the stage name Yotaro, or Fool. His master doesn't actually give him much guidance though, so he ends up leaning on the advice of Yakumo's adopted daughter, Konatsu, in his quest to find his own Rakugo. His starting point ends up being the work of Sukeroku, Konatsu's birth father and Yakumo's old friend and rival from his days as an apprentice. This creates tension with Yakumo, which comes to a head when Yotaro is nearly kicked out of his apprenticeship. But when they've both cooled their heads, Yakumo comes to Yotaro with a heartfelt request to carry on the legacy of both his Rakugo and that of Sukeroku. To hammer home the importance of this request, he launches into a long story about his and Sukeroku's sordid history, starting with their early days as apprentices under the previous Yakumo and leading up to Sukeroku's untimely death. And that story makes up the bulk of this first season's plot. That's right, everything you just heard is only a framing device for the decades-long drama between Kikuhiko, that's Yakumo's original stage name, and Sukeroku. And as compelling and interesting as Yotaro's story is, this backstory is just as gripping. Kikuhiko and Sukeroku are such wonderful, nuanced characters, and their story will keep you spellbound as it slowly unfolds. But the show isn't just about them. It also charts the growth of Japan as a nation during the Showa period, from its extreme pre-war isolationism to the struggle to preserve traditional culture amid the rapid change of the post-war economic miracle. And of course, it's also about Rakugo, how its long history needs to be preserved, but how it must also change to meet the changing demands of the modern age. And of course, that reflects the state of the nation, but it's also interesting simply as a commentary on the art form. This show has a deep love for Rakugo, and it isn't shy about showing it. We see quite a few complete uninterrupted performances throughout the season, each lasting from 5 to 10 minutes, and they're incredibly compelling, portrayed with detailed animation, thoughtful editing, and stellar comedic timing. Not only do these performances convey how cool and interesting Rakugo can be in itself, they also inform us about the characters, serving as milestones along their arcs, and even dramatic confrontations conveyed entirely through subtext. For instance, in the first episode, there's a scene where Yotaro tries to convince his former boss that Rakugo is a worthwhile pursuit, simply by showing him how great it can be. In this one scene, we see a shift in power dynamics, learn about Yotaro and his Aniki's history together, and see him grow as a character. I probably ought to do a video about it one of these days. From start to finish, every episode of Rakugo Shinjuu is a masterpiece. Not only does it work as a comedic drama with dialogue so beautiful it borders on poetic, it also serves as a very informative history lesson about Japan. And the series ends on an ideal note, drawing to an immensely satisfying, bittersweet conclusion while leaving things open for an equally compelling follow-up. And it doesn't just excel in the writing department either. The score that backs each episode, a mix of traditional Japanese music and excellent jazz, sets the tone for every scene perfectly. The performances are stellar across the board, though Akira Ishida's portrayal of Yakumo throughout his entire life is particularly impressive. The animation does wonders to help these characters come alive too, which is surprising considering that it's Studio Dean who also handled the somewhat clumsy animation of Konosuba and were responsible for ruining Log Horizon. To top it all off, the direction is impeccable throughout the series. Shot choices are artful and dense with meaning. The editing is tight and makes it easy to intuitively understand very complex story beats. This show stands head and shoulders above everything else I've seen in the last few years. Without question, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu is worthy of a platinum medal and your time watching it. It's hands down my pick for show of the season. But that's not all you came here for, is it? You want to know what my favorite OP and ED of the season are as well. This winter had a lot of really tight, entertaining OPs. Osomatsu-san, Dagashikashi, Dimension W, Konosuba, Shirayukihime, and Rakugo Shinjuu all delivered particularly strong showings, and even then, for a lot of people, Erased was the clear winner. But there's one OP that managed to top even that for me. Haikyuu has always had great OPs, but Fly High, the second OP of its second season, absolutely blew me away. The incredible rock anthem that backs it introduced me to a new favorite band in Burnout Syndromes, and it's matched by striking animation and editing that does an even better job of hyping me up than the first season's Imagination. I would say more, but looking at my Patreon, it seems like I might be doing a full video on the subject pretty soon, so I'll leave it at that for now. As for my favorite ED of the season, again, there are a lot of strong contenders. Erased is a pretty clear frontrunner with its colorful, trippy visuals and dense symbolism, and I was thinking about giving another award to Haikyuu for its stylish manga-shaded finisher. But I'll be darned if Konosuba didn't charm the pants off me with its mellow, folksy ending theme. I've always been a sucker for ending themes sung by voice actresses from a show, and it's refreshing to hear that in a slow folk song as opposed to a typical up-tempo J-pop number. Not a lot happens in this ED. We see a day passing by as we look down on the town, the people flitting by in tilt-shift time-lapse that makes the whole scene look like a model. It's a laid-back, playful ED that captures the charming tone that underlies the show's frantic, madcap humor. It serves as a perfect way to wind down after laughing your ass off at the show itself, but it still leaves you with a big, bright smile on your face. The guys over at Pause and Select used it as a really strong jumping off point for their review of Konosuba, which I highly recommend watching if this hasn't taken up all your YouTube time for the day. Or if you want to keep hearing my voice, then check out my OP analysis of Erased. If you want to keep hearing my voice forever, consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to hear my voice in your head throughout the day, give me a follow on Twitter at G0FFThu. If you haven't done any of those things and you're still hearing my voice, consider a therapist. Or maybe you can take the money that should definitely be spent on a therapist and spend it on me instead at patreon.com/mothersbasement. If you're supporting me through there already, like these great guys whose names you're seeing right now, then thank you. You are rad. And also, I want to extend a special thank you to my man Zakharinoff for sifting through all 40 minutes of this and turning it into a coherent video. Mad love, dude. As always, this is Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.